Hello and welcome from St. Elred's Mission Church in Lapwai, Idaho. Today I'm going to read to you from the Hebrew Scriptures from the book of Genesis, chapter 32, verses 22 through 31. That night Jacob gathered up his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and went to the river of Jabbok. After he had sent them across, he sent over all of his possessions. So then Jacob was left there alone, and a man struggled with him throughout the night. When the man saw that he could not prevail against Jacob, he struck him at the socket of his hip so that it was put out of joint. Then the man said to Jacob, "Let me go, for day is breaking." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go until you bless me." Then the man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he replied. Then the man said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with man and with God and have prevailed." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But the man replied, "Why is it that you should ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob named that place Peniel, saying, "I have seen the face of God, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose over Peniel, and Jacob now walked with a limp because of his hip. Here ends the reading. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Jacob was the son of Isaac. He was not the most loved of all this man's children, being the second-born of twins from a wife thought to have been barren, and was by no means what many of us would consider to be a hero. Jacob had obtained the blessing of his dying father, which was to be given to his brother Esau by deceit. This, of course, caused rage in Esau, which led to Jacob's departure from his family. In the portion of Jacob's story that we heard, Jacob had gathered up his family and all that he owned, and was returning through the wilderness to his home under God's command. He feared the wrath of his brother, and had desperately devised ways of soothing his anger, in hopes that his life would be spared. In his hour of greatest desperation and loneliness, he is faced with a seemingly unfamiliar and formidable opponent. He struggles with this foe well into the night, without rest and without consolation. Because of his circumstances, Jacob does not recognize his adversary. It is only after the struggle, and after being humbled, that he realizes what has taken place. Perhaps the most profound part of the story of Jacob and his struggle with a stranger in the wilderness is that Jacob is wholly transformed by his experience. He is known by a new name, and is no longer able to walk in the way that he once had. The imagery of Jacob's hip being put out of joint is an apt description of how our encounters with God change us. On the surface, it seems quite simple. Jacob's hip is put out of joint, and from that moment he walks with a limp. But if we reflect on the possibility of a deeper meaning of this imagery, We find that when we encounter God, something deep within us is changed, and we are no longer able to continue in a way that we had before the encounter. Our encounters with God change us. They make us a new person. They change us for the better and cause us to let go of things that hold us down. I have experienced this for myself, and I have seen it in others. Perhaps you, dear viewers, have been changed by God. If you have, please tell us about it in the comments. I wish you all peace and blessings, and hope that your night is restful, and that you rise with praise and thanksgiving in the morning.